Hey, Brian Douglas here. This week's blog is about estate planning for families that have college-age children. So why is that different than estate planning for families that have non-college age children? Well, the big difference is, as you all know, or as we all know, once someone turns 18, they're legally an adult under the laws, right? So it doesn't matter if they still reside in your house, it doesn't matter if they're still in high school, it doesn't matter if you're still paying all the bills, they're now recognized as a legal adult. And we've had so many instances where families have run into this and it's created a problem for them because, you know, mom and dad have always taken care of everything, doctor's visits, things like that. And all of a sudden, on their 18th birthday, mom and dad are shut out and they can't do it anymore. So, for example, we had one family that this happened to. They went to the doctor with their son, he was 17, they did his test and they were getting some blood work back to check his cholesterol, right? Pretty routine stuff, nothing really all that exciting about it. Unfortunately, by the time the results came back, you know, within the next week or whatever it was, a very short period of time, the child had turned 18. So now he's an adult, and so the pediatrician's office that they'd gone to his entire life said to mom, we can't give this to you, your son is the only one that can get it. And they, you know, didn't like that. And they brought their son in and we sat down and we one-on-one with him and went through an estate plan, and he ended up setting up everything because he knew that it was important to have. But the other things that you run into is once your kids go off to college, guess what? You don't have access to their bank accounts. You can't see those. You don't have necessarily access to their grades. You know, you have to trust them to give you the grades. And medical information. If there's an emergency, God forbid, if something happens to your child out of college, away from home, you're gonna have a hard time getting that information from the hospital, from the doctors when you need it. So what do you need to do? Well, I think anyone that turns 18 and goes off to college, but really even anyone that turns 18, you need to have a basic estate plan. You need to have a good financial power of attorney in place. You need to have a good healthcare directive in place. You need to have a HIPAA authorization, which allows someone to access your medical records and not run afoul of the medical privacy rules that the hospitals and doctors are subject to. And then, you know, to the extent that there's any assets that belong to the child or to this now adult, they need to have some sort of will in place that would dispose of those. Even if it's $2,000 in a bank account, if it's sitting in their bank account and something happens to them and they pass away, that $2,000 is locked up. You've got to go to probate to get it. And so it turns into a very complicated thing over what otherwise might seem like an insignificant amount of money or asset. But what about parents? What should they be doing at the same time? Well, many parents set up an estate plan when their kids are young. They set it up and make sure that everything's good and there's a guardian if something happens to mom and dad or whatever the case may be, and then all of a sudden they put it in a drawer and forget about it. Next thing you know, high school graduation, we're off to college, etc., etc. So parents need to review your estate plan. Make sure it's up to date, make sure it's current. And so many families come to us and they say, oh my gosh, I looked at my will and I can't believe how long it's been since we touched this, and none of this even makes any sense anymore because our kids are grown and all these things have changed in our life. And then also make sure at the same time, you know, beneficiaries are properly identified. You know, when your kids were little, you probably had one beneficiary, maybe it was given to somebody to hold the money in trust for your 401k or for a life insurance policy. So it's a really good idea to check that out, look into that, and make sure everything aligns with your life at that time and it makes sense. So if you have any questions about estate planning for your recently turned 18-year-olds or soon to be 18-year-olds or yourself at that point in time, check out this week's blog. That's all we've got for this week, and we'll see you next week.